Hades is a roguelike game developed by Supergiant Games, released in 2018. This company has a pretty good track record with games of this same genre, with Transistor, Bastion, and games that are also outside of this box like Pyre. With Hades 2 being in development, it was only a matter of time before Hades was voted for by the community, which was done not long after Angelic beat Hades with All Heat, which is like an additional modifier for the gameplay and a challenge that was once deemed impossible. One other person that I know of has played Hades with a dance pad setup, that person being the cool dude Peking Boo. But from what I could find, he defeated Hades once with a sword, and that was it. This made me want to up the ante, and so I decided I'm gonna beat up my dad 6 times, 1 for each weapon. I knew Hades was an inevitability, so I'd already theory crafted my control scheme for this kind of a challenge, with an asterisk being I'd most likely need to edit controls for some of the weapons, as some weapons charge attacks when you hold the attack button down, and some of the utility between a weapon's attack and special could swap. But for starters, I mapped out all of the melee weapons, starting with the Stygian Blade. Now, Hades is an interesting departure from the games that I've played so far because of the isometric camera view, where the pathways on screen are diagonal. Dancepad can't traditionally emulate the omnidirectional mobility that controller joysticks provide, but that hasn't stopped me before. Set 1 had the typical up, down, left, right movement, and with combat being a primary action in the game, attack was on the center button, which I'll be smashing like you should smash those like and subscribe buttons. But the magic comes in with the corners. Holding down up left will send me to set 2, and moves Zagreus diagonally. I decided that for sets that move me to one side of the pad, that foot will handle navigation while the other foot will handle combat. Thus, dash went onto the left arrow, special went onto the up arrow. This way I could stand with my feet straddling these buttons and press either one or both at the same time. The right arrow is where I put cast, with my weirdo logic being it's kind of like shooting a bow, and the down arrow would be call, where one of the gods will help Zagreus for a certain period of time. And finally, I didn't want to keep leaving the pad to click options on the menus, so I made the opposite corner the interact button in order to activate shrines, choose options, and open doors. The only exception being I need to put my mouse at a specific location on screen and not dead center, as menu navigation will automatically click the option that my mouse cursor is currently hovering over, even if I choose something else. This is made even more annoying as the spacing between the boon menus and the Well of Charon is different. I put in one final magic trick to these layouts also on the interact button. In Hollow Knight, there was a ton of set swapping, which would cause me to get locked into sets that I didn't want to be in, and while it was a bit easier on Hollow Knight to remember my recent action backwards to stop being locked in, Hades can get spicy. So I added a double tap to the interact corner that would send me back to set 1. Set 3? It's a vertical flip of set 2. That's 4 and 5? They're horizontal flips of sets 2 and 3. My 4 main actions per set stay clustered together no matter where I move, with special always being the up or down arrows, and dash always being either the left or right arrows. Now this was made much easier by my ambidexterity, because I don't believe I could have made this work if I had more dominant hands. Feet.
Hey, you wanna get fucked up?
As one would expect, I had some growing pains with this game and the layout that I had made for myself. I had a rudimentary understanding of the combat, didn't know what worked and what didn't, and latched onto habits from previous games that don't translate very well here. For starters, I was very static and expecting certain boons to do more work than they actually were, instead of treating them effectively as passives and letting enemies live longer than necessary. This meant that my movement overall was faulty, as at times I would dash correctly and utilize iframes, but I had no idea at the time that dash attacks removed my iframes, and so I would die in what I felt were unfair ways. But that just led to the fact that I didn't recognize the attacks enemies were even doing. I never noticed that armored enemies don't get staggered. I was moving so much while other things were moving, information was just whizzing by and not sticking, like I was back in high school learning the linear regression formula. This inevitably meant I was hoping for certain boons to appear, and if I never got them, well, I guess I'll die. I was drawn to things like the Daedalus Hammer's Cursed Slash, where every attack would heal Zagreus for 2 health, at the cost of losing 60% of his health pool. This works for my jump in and flail strategy, but it only delayed the inevitable trip down Styx. This flailing wasn't terrible for the fight against Meg, as she always had enemies spawning, and fighting the Lernian Bone Hydra was mostly successful because I could vamp health from the heads between phases, and aside from shielded enemies, I was still doing damage, but if I didn't get Divine Dash or Phalanx Shot to deflect with my dash or cast respectively, getting other boons in those slots was like a dog chasing a car. I have no idea what to do once I got it. The health problems abounded as I entered Temple of Styx, where I had to find a satyr sack for Cerberus to be distracted by, which involves going down one of these doors and fighting enemies that'll give me the poison ailment. The poisons are a very constant damage over time, and even though I knew where the healing fountains were in the rooms, this didn't always save me. A dozen or so runs and I eventually reached Hades for the first time by sheer luck of the sack being in the second room, but the fight went about how you'd expect.
There is only one thing worse
Than abuse?
boom. A child. No.
What? This first encounter with Hades wasn't all bad, as it let me get access to one of the final boon gods I hadn't met yet, Demeter, and sent me to bed feeling confused, in pain, but with a strange sense of accomplishment. Kinda like my angry dad having no way to deal with an unplanned family reunion, and so he had to vent his frustration out on me by beating my ass. The next portion of my adventure, I came back certain I was going to beat statistics class's ass. No, I didn't study, and no, GLM still doesn't make any sense. I stayed up all night and watched videos, cramming information into my head. My number one issue was survivability. In Hollow Knight, as an example, a very common charm for new players to use is Quick Focus, which allows them to heal faster. Conceptually, this is just a band-aid charm, as the new player is obviously new to the game, thus they're getting hit more often, meaning that they needed to heal more frequently, but getting better at the game meant getting better at the combat and not getting hit, thus never needing to heal. Applying this thought process, I went back into my VODs to find where my survivability was having issues. There are invincibility frames when dashing, but not dash striking, so as long as I don't get too antsy, I can live longer by being patient, which is something boomers should learn a thing or two about. The Centaur Heart doors are basically a heal, as they increase Zagreus' max health, but also increment his health by the same amount, unless it's the Well of Charon's Centaur Soul. But much like with the Quick Focus anecdote, I was relying too heavily on Cursed Slash, and as if the 60% health pool drop wasn't bad enough, needing to heal 2 health from every attack meant I was missing that health when I simply needed to get gooder. I also looked into the mirror and broke it. But after fixing it, I realized that choosing Dark Regeneration was more helpful than Chthonic Vitality, as there are 15 chambers in Tartarus, 10 in Asphodel, and 11 in Elysium. So the max health I could heal back from Chivalry was 108, but I can get Darkness from a number of sources. Whenever a weapon on display is glowing with Dark Thirst, it has a 20% boost to Darkness gain for that run. Sisyphus gives 50 to 55 Darkness, bosses drop Darkness in increments of 50, Infernal Troves could reward Darkness, the Well of Charon can sell the Tinge of Erebus alongside Hydralite or Life Essence, and Poseidon's boons, Sunken Treasure and Ocean's Bounty, can drop Darkness or increase Darkness gained from all sources by more than 50%. With Dark Regeneration, I get healed for 60% of the Darkness that I pick up, meaning simply beating the 3 bosses will heal me for more than opening every door leading to the Temple of Styx. Hell, just from talking to Sisyphus, opening 3 Darkness chambers, buying Darkness once from Charon, getting the Tinge of Erebus, and only beating Meg, I can regain the same amount of health in Tartarus alone than I'd get from opening every door before I entered the Temple of Styx. Wow. Maybe all I needed to pass statistics in high school was have it attributed to video games. The biggest thing missing for me was understanding build synergy. I knew I wanted boons to help blender clusters of enemies or be defensive, but I didn't quite understand the system, and so if I got something I didn't want, I'd quickly go from this to this. The 5 main actions can be seen on the left side of the screen, and when a boon from one of the slots is gained, it gets filled in. After a slot is filled, the odds of getting a boon for that same action is exceedingly rare, often not happening until the next biome or even later. I mainly wanted the dash or cast to be Athena's, so I can deflect on demand while saving my offensive capabilities for thick hits from Ares' Doom, or damage over time from Dionysus. Saxonisis right there. More like Dionysus ass, right? Boom! So while I was starting with Athena's keepsake, hoping for dash deflect to start, I should have played my odds better and gone with a god that I'd be okay with on multiple actions. Zeus and Dionysus are really only useful for me on attack or special, as I can't aim Festive Fog properly, and I won't have other sources for triggering Zeus's jolted status effect later on, so Chain Lightning was just eh. And I hadn't seen Poseidon when I had a Nectar in my pocket, so I couldn't guarantee his boons. So Ares was the best starter god for me, as Doom on either the attack or special is a solid boost to damage, and casting Blade Rifts is nice indirect damage. After taking up a couple of slots, I could then better guarantee an Athena boon when I reach Asphodel's biome and fill up either the dash, call, or both with Athena's deflection. As for the call, anything that makes me invulnerable is a huge plus, so Athena's wasn't terrible, but Poseidon's lets me use Surf, so I'm invulnerable and deal massive damage when I collide with an enemy. For the first time in 26 years, Pikachu could in fact use Surf. Aphrodite's Call has a high base damage of 2500 with a full God's Gauge, making it a solid contender as a boss killer. So if I couldn't get Athena or Poseidon, I would gladly take this instead.
He's beginning to believe.
Putting all this together, I jumped back into the Underworld and oddly enough, controls just seemed to stick. I wasn't flailing as much, I was grouping mobs better, controlling the field while using hazards and walls to help with Elysium combat, still dash striking at the worst of times, but I was mostly able to wrap around enemies and cleanly blender everything. I finally got effective damage over time, with Ares' Blade Rift dash, Demeter's cast, and Dionysus' attack quickly whittling down anything in my path. Add to all of this damage, I got Daedalus Hammer's Double Edge, which made Dash Strike hit twice, meaning Electo and Hydra were the embodiment of polar ice caps affected by climate change, because they fucking melted. I also picked up the Stubborn Roots Duo boon, where I heal 1 health every 0.8 seconds if I didn't have a Death Defiance, meaning that even in the worst of times, running away and being patient, or tactical cowardice, is rewarded. Although Theseus' shield meant he blocked frontal damage, he also walks away from Zagreus after every attack he does, so every opportunity that I got to attack him meant Dash Strike hit twice, which dealt solid damage and applied my dots. This build helped set me up for the Temple of Styx, as close quarters combat and many enemies meant Blade Rift or Demeter's cast would make quick work of them, but my inexperience leads me to realize that the Death Defiance Duo boon is affected by all Death Defiance types, including the rank 1 Lucky Tooth I had just equipped. So I just buy another Death Defiance because, I mean, it's here. Hades' Phase 1 isn't awful, as it's just trading places until he spawns minions. Certain minions aren't bad, but without Breaching Slash to boost armor damage, the chariots punish my game plan as they're faster than Hades is. So near, far, wherever I are, I believe that my health will be gone. Do you guys hear that music? Hades Phase 2 is more constricted, with green jars that explode into an AoE that stuns whoever it hits, and this plus a crazy lack of dash management and a mistimed dash strike finally kills me. But there was a lot of mistaken positioning I noticed right away, and it being fresh in my mind, I actively worked on it in the next run. But my next run's build was something.
Mess. How my life has always been described.
My main damage was Doom on attack, and a Chaos boon that increased backstab damage by 144% when I completed it, and I utilized my slot reservation plan by having Festive Fog take up a slot, which would let me get the dash deflect that I wanted. But really, that was about it. The synergy was just not there. A bit later, I get the boon to make my deflects expose enemies, so dashing through enemies will add more backstab damage for the Chaos boon, and I picked up Dionysus' Call to take up a slot, but I soon sell it after I beat the other Fury Electo, and then while in Asphodel, I luckily run into Eurydice, who has the potential to upgrade boon rarities or levels. I had a pretty stacked set of boons, -2, that would have been great to upgrade here.
Upgraded rarity, as long as it's not Trippy Shot or the dash. That sucks. Go for it. What you got? Trippy Shot and Hyper Sprint. It would be the two I didn't want you to do. Thanks, Eurydice, for nothing. Have fun in heck.
My Doom gets a further increase in damage with Impending Doom, where it'll hit harder but take half a second longer to detonate, and while this doesn't fail to give Hydra a nice lava bath, it's still kinda just there. To compensate for this, I put Palms of Power into anything related to Ares or Doom, so I upgraded my attack, the movie with The Rock and Carl Urban, the Goat Constellation, and even John Carmack's net worth any chance that I got. And to add to the depressing train wreck that Eurydice left me with, none of the options in the Daedalus Hammer are ones that I want, so I haphazardly take Cruel Thrust for more damage on the third strike of a melee combo, but I've been spamming dash strikes so much that it felt like a wasted effort, until I picked up Support Fire from Artemis. Using Butterfly Ball as a damage check, I only need one hit on the Elite Exalted and Doom Detonation kills them, and my reward for killing the Butterfly Ball is Urge to Kill for 10% more damage. Athena's calls picked up as I enter my fight with Theseus and the Minotaur. The random blend of pickups made the Asterius fight move so slowly, but with Theseus always walking away after an attack, my backstabs just decimated him.
Your mom. Got him!
This run was different. Even the game knew it was different because the Satyr Sack was in the final room, but this gave me a sense of awakening. I had a solid build in my previous run and I still died with the goal right in sight despite all of the synergy, boosts, the sack was in the second Styx room, but here I had what I felt was a terrible build. Seemingly two half builds that don't synergize with each other at all, and yet I was plowing through a major endurance fight to reach the same battle. I was no longer doing just leg day. I was carrying a lackluster build towards the finish line. I was built different. Entering the Hades fight, ads were insignificant archers thanks to dash deflect rendering their attacks moot, and a steady track led to phase 2. After a painfully slow whittling down in phase 2, Athena's call sealed the deal as all of the extra bits and bobs of damage sources came together, and I finally defeated Hades after 27 attempts with a sword.
Oh, blood and darkness. Oh no. I can't answer the question. I died. Blech. Fuck you.
As if I needed further confirmation of my point on carrying lackluster builds, I completely forgot I had Hoarding Slash learned until I saw the post-fight screen that showed my stats. I could have broken 1,000 obols at one point, but purchased so many things that my attack went from possibly an extra 84 damage per hit to a bonus 9 damage on top of everything I had already, drastically nerfing my potential output. Here's some numbers on screen to drive that hammer home if you are a math nerd like me. Well, with this defeat, plot stuff happens, and once I head back home, I find out Dad doesn't want anyone to know that he got beat up, and he told everyone he had to go use the little god's room instead of telling them he had to fight me. But I still want to ascend 5 more times, so I got right to work in making the Underworld question Hades' weak bladder. My next order of business was to use Malphon. With all the darkness I've accumulated, I finish out the mirror and learn about aspects, putting a point into dodge chance. I also learn about the Pact, where I can add limitations to my runs to increase heat, but I don't really care about that clout right now. As for the run itself, the fists were so strong it was breaking the recording of my Tisiphone fight. In reality, it was because Anti-Micro started taking up 30% of my CPU again and causing multiple lock-ins per fight. But I caught this much later, right around before I fought Theseus and Asterius. I also didn't catch Daedalus Hammer's upgrade to do 900% armor damage with my dash strike until here as well. But, I mean, holy cow, fists are strong, man.
95%. Dad's just gonna love this gift. Time to fist my dad.
Wait, Hades Phase 1 went exactly as I expected. Hades Phase 2 went better than I expected. I don't even have any words for this. Malphon is just really busted.
Goodbye.
Aegis the Shield is next up. The blocking literally everything is great for turtling, even blocking boss hits, but I need to never hold down center if I can help it, which made navigation worse than the fists. Because at least the fists would keep attacking if the button was held down and wiggle Zagreus forward, but shield would make him stand completely still. I wouldn't even be able to aim in all directions, so more often than not, the blocking would be popping towards cardinal directions, but the field of effectiveness is pretty generous. I get the boon Curse of Pain to put Doom onto my special, seeing as shield was a departure from other fights, as the special is actually useful, making the primary attack a melee attack and the special a ranged attack. With the Dreadflight Daedalus Hammer, each of the 5 bounces tags the enemy with Doom and makes wave clearing a breeze. Aegis also trivialized the Hades fight, as although the clearing speed of the weapon is the worst out of all weapons thus far, Hades' laser beams were blockable, Aphrodite's Call absolutely chunks, and shield dashing mixed with larger and longer blade rift casts meant that I could go back and forth for constant damage, and if at any point he killed me even once, I had that boon where each Death Defiance adds more damage for that encounter. And I entered this fight with 4 double Ds, so there was just no way Hades was gonna stop me here. The final melee weapon is the oversized carving fork, Varatha. This came with mild difficulties because while the fists and shields holding attacks were somewhat useful, Spear just wasn't helpful at all unless you had slow-moving enemies walking up to you and you didn't feel like doing anything, or the crystals in the first mini-boss room. The attack poke is a nice safe range to keep enemies at a distance, but without some of the right boons, this can cause room clearing to be a slog. The fight with Tisiphone showed the damage, but also how effective Dash Strike is at clearing projectiles when I'm not running into them head on. But it's not until Asphodel that I start to notice the Dash Strike animation range is massive. This boon cycle was very unsynergistic with Artemis's attack, Doom on special, Blade Rift Call, and Poison Dash, but did help with the Hydra heads, as dashing away put on dots, the special put on Doom, and at least my cast was reflect for the projectiles. Combined with the large range on the spear, this boss fight did go faster than I expected, but the wave clear potential was non-existent, and I was crushed by Thanatos, which had never happened before, and my survivability was lacking, which was slightly rectified by a surprising amount of Death Defiance refreshes, somehow letting me get to Theseus and the Minotaur, where I spent so freaking long killing Asterius. Demeter makes Theseus's portion of the fight take even longer with her slow AoE, and I somehow make it to Hades, using my special to whittle him down, but between the skulls and the Hydra head that he spawns partway through, this just ruined my rhythm, and at some point my feet said it's time to rest, so I took a swim in Styx. I unlocked the final section of the Mirror of Night, and since an optimal build has multiple gods in it, Family Favorite is the way to go. I tried to theorycraft a spear build, so I get the aspect of Achilles and go on the hunt for Poseidon. He's the only major god that I haven't given a nectar to, and I want a boon of his, for reasons. The next couple of runs have nothing going on, and while I get to Hades, I don't get far. But I finally get Poseidon and give him a nectar, and then get Poseidon's aid, as I hope I can get him again for another boon I'm wanting. But while I'm holding out hope, here's the temp receptionist Electo taking his call. Reaching Asphodel, I finally get the combo I've wanted. Chain lightning on my attack, doesn't really matter, but I wanted Poseidon's dash for knockback, as well as Razor Shoals for his rupture, which does damage if the enemy moves. I combine this with Dash Strike, where I just keep mashing these 2 buttons over and over again, knocking things back and applying bleed, theoretically clearing out the health bar of anything in my path. I tested this out on Lerny, which is perfect. Why? Because the heads lunge at Zagreus, meaning they move. Meaning? This is even better in Elysium, as enemies are always moving around and dashing. Asterius gets 1 hit on me, and then I get another lovely boon from Ares. While Asterius sees a repeat of my boon combinations to put him down, Theseus learns here he actually wasn't Poseidon's favorite. Fuck you! Expecting a long run in the Temple of Styx again, I buy Cyclops Jerky, which increases my attack by 30% for the next 6 encounters. In the room right before I find the Satyr Sack, meaning the Cyclops Jerky will come with me into the Hades fight. An urge to kill brings even more damage with me. And this closes out all the melee weapons, so now we can move on to the 2 projectile weapons, the bow, and ancient Greece's most advanced technological weapon,
Happy Christmas.
It was beginning to look a lot like Christmas, but instead of wrapping gifts with a bow, I started Christmas using a bow. I removed attack from set 1's middle button, so not only could I rest on set 1, but I could do a makeshift version of an original idea that I had, where by holding the middle button and one of my directional corners, I'll aim the bow where I want to look like I'm drawing back the bowstring. I choose the aspect of Chiron, which makes my special hone in all of the arrows onto a target that I previously shot with my primary attack. However, I start my first bow run with Skelly's Tooth accidentally, but since this was a practice run, I chose to move forward with it. It's whatever. Getting Curse of Pain, Frost Strike, and Poseidon's Call, along with a handful of palm upgrades, made the Tisiphone fight uneventful, and the massive damage from all the palms that I put into my Doom effects meant basically two-shotting every Hydra head. Back in Tartarus, I had picked up Piercing Volley to do 400% more damage to armor, making enemies in Elysium and the Temple of Styx so much more vulnerable to my honing special. Temple of Styx was my big worry in all of this, and Zagreus jinxing it here didn't exactly help my mental state.
Gods grant me a swift satyr sack.
Wait, why did he just jinx himself asking for a swift satyr sack? Why did you say that?
The lack of focused AoE damage meant that I needed to do a lot of kiting in the individual rooms, and in the spirit of Christmas, I must say that with all the small chambers, I was suffering from claustrophobia. The Doom on special was a bit helpful, as I could tag random enemies with Doom if I fanned the special out, or it does solid damage if I hit an enemy with my primary attack and then focus fire. And it turns out, I don't need no damn keepsake as I enter the Hades fight with the accidental Skelly Tooth from the start of the run, along with one other Death Defiance. And those two plus Blood Frenzy?
Yeah! Bow first try!
For the final weapon, Exegriff, attack comes back to set 1. I can only go the aspect of Zagreus, as the special is similar to Festive Fog and I won't be manually reloading, but the extra ammo is almost kinda pointless with the specific build that I'm going for. Similar to the Spear's Dash Strike, I can do a Dash Strike spamming build with Poseidon's Knockback, but I want a Daedalus Hammer that gives me Spread Fire, which will turn the shots into a shotgun instead of bullets. I sadly didn't get that. I get Hunter Dash for more Dash Strike damage, which is a cool second place, and you can see just how effective half of my ideal build is with the 2 Elite Inferno Bombers. But the game kept trying to tell me I need to use Demeter, and I don't want her boons because then I'd have to travel by Icicle. Nothing seemed to go my way, especially as I finally ran into Poseidon and he kept giving me nothing I wanted. With Theseus and Asterius taking forever, Poseidon just screwing me, and Temple of Styx slowly draining me, I go swimming and hope for a new beginning. I start next run with some armor and piercing, but Ares gives me a conundrum as I wanted Poseidon on attack or dash, and I want Athena's deflect on cast, but I guess Blade Dash was the best consolation prize. I get part of my plan in Razor Shoals, which helps me do more damage when mixed with Poseidon's Call. Getting past Tartarus, I put on Poseidon's Keepsake to guarantee him next time I see a boon, and not only do I get the boon I want, but I get it for free. What a lovely Christmas gift. A Daedalus Hammer I didn't know existed helps with wave clear, as it helps me put Razor Shoals onto other enemies, and then I get the option of 2 duo boons and pick Stubborn Roots again. I screwed up before with getting that before I knew how to maneuver around. I wasn't about to make that same mistake again. The Daedalus Hammer that I got pays dividends in the Temple of Styx because I don't need to get anywhere near a poison source. It actually does such a great job keeping enemies away that the Satyr Sack was once again in the final chamber, and I was still doing a pretty good job staying alive, as bullets were bouncing off of enemies and the walls. Entering the Hades fight with Exegriff for the first time, with all of my Death Defiances, I'm feeling pretty good. The attack bounce means that I can kill skulls by aiming at Hades if he's nearby, or I can hit Hades if he's nearby, simply shooting the skull. With how much Hades moves around, that rupture damage adds up. Phase 2, I find out that the gun auto-aims at the jars, making their existence also insignificant. Poseidon's Call does work, and with some fancy footwork and not even needing that Stubborn Roots duo boon, this run is like if King Midas and Oedipus teamed up, because it was motherfucking gold as Hades falls to Exegriff, and I've defeated him once with every weapon in the game.
Done!
Blast you, boy. You think you are superior? Why?
Woo!
With my climb up from the Underworld completed, I know heat runs are going to be asked about. I plan on having heat runs as a donation incentive on future charity streams along with Farewell and Celeste, and if you want to contribute to that, come join me on Twitch and participate in the mayhem. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
That's a bite.
A knucklehead. I caught me.
Vitality.
I just want you to know I have no fucking idea what I just did. So if it looked really cool, I'll take the credit for it. But if it didn't look cool, it was Kasa's fault.